Let's take a look at some of the highlights from the Stuart Blay collection, better known as the Red Copper collection of small cents. A key date for the series, the 1931 S wheat cent. It is counted as the second lowest regular issue mintage figure for the series at only 866,000 coins minted, a very low mintage for the series. The current coin was graded by PCGS as MS66 red, and at the auction it sold for the final price of $10,069.89. One of the best cases of doubling on the reverse of a Lincoln cent in the entire series is the 1983 double die reverse coin. Very strong evidence of offset hub doubling can be seen across the entire reverse design, most notably on the letters of 1 cent, as they are the largest and most prominent on the design, but also on the various letters of E pluribus unum, where all of the doubling is displayed due south of the final impression. Graded as MS68 red by PCGS, this popular variety was sold at auction for $11,306.25. One of the top double die varieties from the Memorial Cent series comes to us from 1972. The 1972 double die obverse cent is a strong example of rotated hub doubling, displaying clockwise spread across the entire coin. As is typical, the date displays this effect especially attractively, but the rest of the letters on the obverse are also very strongly affected in their own right. Graded by PCGS as MS67 red plus, this brilliant coin was sold at auction for $17,437.50. A very rare variety that, frankly, you'd be lucky to acquire in any grade, let alone a full red gem like this, is the 1929 S over S repunched mint mark coin. There is good reason, after all, that this is a Konica Top 100 listed repunched mint mark variety, with the remnants of the initial S mint mark seen directly towards the top of the final impression. Graded by PCGS as MS66 red, the closing price at auction for this beauty was $26,837. One of my favorite varieties for the Lincoln series is the 1917 double die obverse penny. It's not the most aggressive doubling, but the classical Class 1 rotated hub doubling displays evenly across all of the details of the coin, making it all the more perplexing that this variety remained undiscovered for decades following its release. Although that fact does explain the lack of high-grade examples in the market today. This example was graded by PCGS as a spectacular MS65 red, which saw a closing price at auction of $29,812. A variety coin for which high-grade examples are almost unheard of and seen even less is the 1925 S over S penny. The repunched mint mark variety lists only a handful of truly mint state specimens, and most of that population is concentrated in the brown or rarely at best the red-brown columns. With a boldly repunched mint mark, the popularity of this coin is easy to explain as well. Graded as PCGS MS65 red, which makes it the finest known of its type. It sold for $42,259.99. A slightly more modern gem from this collection, at least in terms of it being a memorial cent, was the 1970 S large date double die obverse penny, a spectacular red book listed variety that is sometimes unfairly overlooked in favor for its more flamboyant varieties from the preceding and following years. It nonetheless has very strong doubling on the obverse letters and the date alike, with the In God We Trust section being especially eye-catching, graded by PCGS as MS66 red, with with none finer noted on the combined population reports, it sold at auction for $42,750. The 1914 Denver Mint wheat cent has been considered a key date in the series ever since collecting by date and mint mark was broadly popularized in around the early 1930s or so. On a 1935 price list of US coins, the 1914D is the most expensive Lincoln cent at $2. This, while the 09S VDB was listed for a mere 25 cents. The top grade and impeccable eye appeal of this coin secured a closing price at auction of $109,687. Ever since 1982, our beloved Lincoln penny has been struck on debased zinc core coins with a thin copper coating, a cost-saving measure implemented when the formerly 95% copper coins became too expensive to justify. But in 1974, a similar measure was proposed, and a large number of coins were actually struck from aluminium instead. None of those coins were ever actually released into circulation, and the piece here is technically an error coin, struck over top an existing 2 paisa coin from Nepal. Graded by PCGS as Proof 68 Cameo, it was sold at auction for $199,687. Now, one of the more interesting coins in the Lincoln penny series is the 1922 No D cent. You see, in 1922, the Philadelphia Mint was largely closed for renovations, only striking peace dollars, double eagles, and a very small number of commemorative half dollars. So, imagine the surprise when a small number of pennies were discovered with no mint mark, which would traditionally indicate the Philadelphia Mint as its place of origin. It turns out that the obverse die was badly damaged and aggressively polished to remove said damage, in the process removing inadvertently so the D mint mark as well. Seeing a coin like this with red luster is almost unheard of. This MS64 red example sold for $253,125. A coin that requires little to no introduction is 1955 double die obverse penny, probably the best known variety coin out there, with doublings so bold that it could easily be spotted with the naked eye. Every single element of the obverse design is doubled to at least some degree, but none stand out more than the date, which has become this variety's hallmark. Graded by PCGS as MS65 plus red, which secured a final price at auction of $287,156. The first of two 1909 cents to make its way onto this list is on display now. This is an enigmatic and extremely rare 1909 SVDB Lincoln penny. This first year of issue coin is distinguished by the fact that only 484,000 coins like this were minted, with the VDB initials on the reverse at the San Francisco Mint. All subsequent coins had the designer's initials removed. This is once again a Pop 1 example graded as MS67 red on an old school green PCGS label that sold at auction for the astounding amount of $345,375. Now we have a matte-proof version of the rare 1909 VDB coin, minted before the VDB initials were removed from the design of the coin. Even though this issue has a mintage of 1,194 coins, they were so unpopular with contemporary collectors that today we only see an estimated surviving population of around 65 coins that still retain the original red mint luster. This example is graded as Proof 67 plus red. To put that into context, the ESM and Bender collections only included Proof 66 examples of this coin. At auction, this coin was sold for $365,625. Now, as many coin searchers would already be well aware, the 1919 wheat cent is not exactly a rare coin. With a massive mintage of 392 million coins, it is probably the easiest pre-1930 penny to come across. What we have here is no ordinary 1919 cent. It is an immaculate example, not only the Pop 1 coin for its issue, but at least to my knowledge, the only MS69 fully red wheat cent graded by PCGS. Add to that an absolutely flawless strike quality, and you begin to understand why this coin was sold at auction for $421,875. Yet another new record was set by the next coin, the famous 1969 S double-die obverse memorial cent, following only the 1955 coin from before. This is easily the most sought-after penny in the series, especially when you are directly addressing variety coins. With extremely bold doubling on virtually all of the obverse elements, it made headlines in 2018 when a PCGS MS64 coin like this was sold for $126,000. But this coin, the sole finest known at a grade of MS66 red from PCGS with CAC endorsement, was sold here for $601,875. And of course, the undisputed highlight of the auction was the 1958 double-die obverse wheat cent, the finest graded of only 3 coins known to exist for this type. Now, I've already made a more in-depth video about this coin alone, so I won't go into too many details here. But it is a spectacular variety that very few people even get a chance to see, let alone own, and is sure to be the crowning jewel of any Lincoln cent or variety coin collection. It easily obliterated records when it was sold at auction for $1,136,250. A great variety from 1897. The 1897 one-in-neck repunched date variety, a coin that was known in past years as the spur-on-neck variety, due to the fact that the remnant of the flag of the number 1 from the date seen here directly towards the left on Liberty's neck, just above her pearls, somewhat resembles the spur on a cowboy's boot. The example was graded by PCGS as MS64 plus red-brown, and it was sold at the auction event for the sum of $14,063. 1895 saw a significant increase in the amount of pennies produced at the Philadelphia Mint, rising from fewer than 17 million in 1894 to 38 million coins struck in 1895. This issue is officially broached in a letter from Mint Superintendent Herman Kratz, dated December 17, 1895, to Mint Director Preston, and reads, "The demand for 1-cent bronzes is on the increase daily, and if it continues at this rate, we will be unable to supply the wants as it should be done from an institution of this character. I have decided that if it meets with your approval to run the presses until 8 p.m. each day until such time that the orders for 1-cent bronzes are filled, to allow each employee who works overtime at the rate they are paid." This coin is graded as MS67 plus red from PCGS, and at auction it managed the price of $46,125. The 1866 penny represents the first in a subset of difficult-to-obtain coins known as a Reconstruction-era set, ranging from this to about 1878, when the Morgan dollar entered into circulation, where many, especially fractional coins, entered circulation in the post-Civil War era, with very few high-grade coins surviving today as a result. This was even somewhat prophetically hinted at the Mint Director's report of 1866, which reads, "Demand from these small coins both bronze and nickel, was very great during the year, and the coinage was regulated to meet the demand. They were distributed to all parts of the United States, but principally towards the west and southern states. This coin was graded by PCGS as MS66 Red, and by auction's end it had sold for $48,375. And now for one of the mainstay varieties for the series, the 1969 over 69 repunched date variety coin, a coin which in past years was mistakenly referred to as an overdate, although that is clearly not the case. It is easily identified by the doubling effect that can be spotted and caused by the initial punching of the last two numbers of the date, still seen towards the north of the final placement. This coin, graded as PCGS MS66 Plus Red, stands as the sole finest known for the variety, and at auction was able to secure a final price of $59,623.50. The 1871 Indian head cent is widely recognized as a key date for the series, with an overall mintage of only 3,929,500, usually mentioned in close succession to the 1872, which has a roughly comparable mintage. In addition, there are also many known varieties for the issue. In fact, an article from the Numismatist from April of 1910 was already discussing variety coins for this issue. Here we have an example that was graded by PCGS as MS65 Red and sold at auction for $61,875. Today, the 1886 penny is generally divided into two main varieties, simply known as the Type 1 and Type 2 coins. This is how it's notated in the Red Book, for instance. It indicates a minor obverse design variety that's easiest to identify by the feathers on Liberty's headdress. On the Type 1 coin, the last feather points between the letters I and C of America, whereas on the Type 2 coins, the tip of the feather will point between the C and the A instead. The variety was only discovered in around 1950 and did not become broadly collectible until much later. This example is graded by PCGS as MS66 Plus Red and was able to secure a final price at auction of $64,687.50. The 1868 Indian head cent was not generally recognized as scarce until well after the coinage melts of 1871 and 75 took place. As a result, very few mint-state coins were preserved, although it is still a little more attainable than the comparable 1867 coin, I should say. As a result, unfortunately, many examples in past years were dipped to give them an eye-pleasing appearance. So just keep that in mind should you come across one. The example here, though, is a problem-free PCGS MS66 Plus coin that stands at the very top of the population report, and at auction it was sold for $78,975. The Indian Head Penny series is a veritable treasure trove for those variety collectors willing to put in the effort, especially when it comes to repunched dates and the like. But one of the best-known variety coins in the series is the 1873 doubled Liberty cent. On this coin, the letters of Liberty are all dramatically doubled towards the west. This spectacular coin was able to raise no less than $81,562.50 at auction in a PCGS slab with a grade of MS64 Red. In 1864, the mint changed the composition of the penny from a copper nickel to a bronze alloy. This change likely prompted chief engraver James B. Longacre to bring about a few minor changes to the obverse of the portrait. This included, but was certainly not limited to, adding a small capital letter L to the bottom of Liberty's hair ribbon. This is today known as the 1864 with L cent. The example here is graded as PCGS MS66 Plus Red, and at auction it managed to attain a closing price of $81,225. A significant drop in the production of pennies took place in 1884, almost halving the number of coins produced in just the previous year, a trend that would actually last for another 2 years yet. One potential explanation for this is that the mint was struggling to get hold of copper planchets or raw copper for these coins. As the mint director's report and other sources indicate, they switched suppliers 3 times in a 2-year period from 1883 to 1885. This coin was graded by PCGS as MS67 plus red and at auction was sold for the sum of $81,563. 1877 is, without any doubt, the key issue for the series, with a total mintage of only 852,500 coins, struck at the Philadelphia Mint. The reason for this is likely reduced demand in circulation, an unintended side effect of the resumption of silver specie payments by the Treasury from 1873 onward. Also, the practice of redeeming and then reissuing older small denomination coins all contributed to the lack of demand for newly dated coins. You can further see the effects of this on the nickel 3-cent and 5-cent coins that were not issued at all in 1877 or 1878. This specimen was graded as MS66 plus red by PCGS and was sold at auction for $340,785. The main FS 101 or Snow 4 double die obverse variety for the 1857 Flying Eagle cent. On this coin there is doubling to the south of the eagle's beak, as well as the eye, which is doubled quite nicely in the same orientation. Further doubling can then also be identified to the north of the eagle's tail feathers, as well as the last several letters of America. In addition to these, this coin has what is known as a missing wingtip, where the details of the wingtip appear to be worn down, even on a high-grade example like this one. This was a defect on the coin hub and is seen on several different coins. This example was graded as MS65, and at auction it sold for a total of $7,110. Next up is the 1858 Flying Eagle cent. Specifically though, the small letters variety of the issue. The easiest way to distinguish between the two types, the small and the large letters, is to look at the letters of America. Specifically, the first A and M. On the small letters type, like this coin, there should be a small gap between the base of the two letters, whereas on the large letters, by contrast, the two are actually touching each other. You can also look at the eagle's beak, as the design was also altered very slightly in this area, giving it a distinct appearance for each type. This coin was graded by PCGS as MS66 and was sold at auction for $16,312.50. While an example of the large letters type, graded by PCGS as MS66 Plus, was sold for the sum of $30,037.50. And while the 1858 Flying Eagle cent is under discussion, the proof coin was also seen. This, again, is the large letters proof example. Now, mintage estimates for this particular issue range from 50 to 100 coins, although the higher end of that estimate range is likely more accurate. The example seen here was graded by PCGS as MS65 plus cameo, and at auction was sold for $41,124. The final 1858 Flying Eagle coin to look at here comes to us in the form of an overdate variety, the 1858 over 7, which was first discovered, or more accurately brought to the attention of the collecting community at large, in the late 1950s. It is characterized by a small triangular bump just above the date, as well as the remnant of an underlying 7 towards the top right of the last number 8 in the date. This coin was graded by PCGS as MS65 and at auction managed to raise $51,187. The 1857 cent is considered by some to be quite an ordinary date. It was certainly overlooked in earlier years. However, with distinct date design varieties, as well as multiple clash dies to look for, it has proven itself to be a most interesting coin type and issue overall. This specimen was graded as MS66 Plus by PCGS and stands at the top of the population report as such. At auction, it managed to sell for a princely $55,125. The 1856 Flying Eagle cent was initially intended purely as a proof of concept, or a type of patent issue intended to persuade Congress that the new size and metallic content would be a viable option for general circulation. This in anticipation of the Mint Act of 1857, which was then still being written. As such, no clear mintage figures were kept. In addition, the coin would later be restruck by the mint in order to fill collector demand as late as 1858. Most references list a range of 1,000 to 2,500 coins minted. This example was graded by PCGS as MS66 and, as you would expect from this collection, stands at the top of the population report in terms of grade. At auction's close, it had sold for $343,125. Subscribe to WNN and activate notifications to know when new videos are released. For the World Numismatic News, I am Numisman saying thank you for watching, keep collecting, and have a fantastic day.